Ethan Whitaker shuffled toward the boarding gate, his cane tapping softly against the airport's glossy floors. His faded navy jacket hung loosely on his wiry frame, its patches weathered with time and memories. Beneath his cap, wisps of silver hair framed his face, a face etched with lines of both hardship and pride. The trip to Washington, D.C., wasn't about leisure. It was for a ceremony honoring the courageous actions of his naval unit. Ethan had never cared for grand gestures, but he felt it was his duty to attend. After all, there weren't many left to share the stories of their bravery. The gate agent, a young woman named Amy, glanced at Ethan's boarding pass with a practiced smile that faltered just slightly before snapping back into place. "Sir," she said, her voice polite but firm, "this ticket appears to be invalid for this flight." Ethan's brows knitted together. "There must be a mistake. I bought this ticket weeks ago." Amy's eyes flickered with impatience as she scanned the ticket again. "I'm sorry, but this seat has already been reassigned to another passenger. You'll have to wait here while we sort this out." Ethan sighed heavily and stepped aside, his cane trembling slightly as passengers streamed past him. Behind him, a man in his mid-30s leaned casually against a pillar, observing the interaction, clad in a plain black jacket and jeans. Alex Carter looked like any other traveler, but Alex was no ordinary passenger. He was the owner of Carter Airways, the airline Ethan was attempting to board. Alex often traveled incognito to observe how his staff treated customers. Alex's sharp eyes narrowed as he watched Amy exchange quiet words with a colleague. He caught snippets of their conversation. "Overbooked again. Just ask him to wait. He probably won't make a fuss." Alex's jaw tightened. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but something about the dismissiveness in their tone unsettled him. His gaze returned to Ethan, who stood patiently to the side, his hand gripping his cane as minutes turned to 10, then 15. Eventually, Amy returned, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitaker, but there's no seat available for you on this flight." Ethan blinked in confusion. "No seat? I paid for this ticket, and I have somewhere I need to be." Amy's voice lost its veneer of politeness. "The flight is overbooked. Sir, we can rebook you for tomorrow." Before Ethan could respond, Alex stepped forward. "Excuse me," he interjected, his tone calm but authoritative. "What seems to be the issue here?" Amy looked startled, her professional mask slipping for a moment. "Oh, no issue," she said quickly. "We're just assisting this passenger." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Assisting him by denying his seat? He has a valid ticket, doesn't he?" Amy hesitated. "Yes, but then he should be allowed to board." Alex interrupted, his voice firm. Ethan glanced at Alex, surprised by the stranger's intervention. "It's all right, son. I'll figure it out." But Alex wasn't about to let it go. "No," he said, turning back to Amy. "This isn't acceptable. Overbooking is the airline's mistake, not his." Amy flushed. "I'll see what I can do," she muttered, retreating to confer with a colleague. Alex turned to Ethan with a small smile. "I'm Alex. Mind if I stick around to make sure they don't give you the runaround?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Suit yourself. I appreciate it." As the minutes ticked by, Alex struck up a conversation with Ethan. He learned that Ethan had served in the Navy during the Korean War and was traveling to reunite with his surviving comrades for an awards ceremony. Ethan spoke humbly, downplaying his role, but Alex could sense the depth of his experiences. When Amy returned, her expression was sour. "We've managed to find a seat for you, sir. It's in the last row next to the restroom." Ethan's shoulders sagged slightly, but he nodded. "That'll do." Alex, however, wasn't satisfied. "That's unacceptable. He paid for a specific seat." Amy's forced smile returned. "It's the best we can do." Alex's eyes hardened. He wanted to reveal his identity, to call out Amy's behavior, but he held back. There was more to this situation, and he wanted to see how it played out. As Ethan made his way onto the plane, Alex followed, his mind racing. Ethan settled into his cramped seat, his duffel bag at his feet. Alex took a seat a few rows ahead, pretending to check his phone while keeping an eye on the veteran. Something about Ethan tugged at Alex's memory. Then he saw it. A glint of metal spilling out of Ethan's bag as he adjusted it. Alex's breath caught when he recognized it. A Distinguished Service Cross. He'd seen that medal before, displayed proudly on the mantelpiece of his late grandfather, William Carter, who had often shared stories of his time in the Navy. One name had come up repeatedly: Ethan Whitaker. Alex's chest tightened. Could it be the same man? He needed to know. As the plane leveled out at cruising altitude, Alex stood and made his way toward the back. "Mind if I sit here for a bit?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat beside Ethan. Ethan squinted up at him before nodding. "Sure, son. Long as you don't mind the smell back here," he joked, gesturing toward the restroom. Alex chuckled. "I've had worse." He hesitated before adding, "That's an impressive medal you've got there. Distinguished Service Cross." "Right." Ethan's eyes flickered with surprise. Not many recognize that these days. Alex nodded. "My grandfather had one. He used to tell me about the men he served with. Said they were the real heroes." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. "Your grandfather must have been one of them." Then, Alex paused, choosing his words carefully. "He talked a lot about someone named Ethan Whitaker. Said he wouldn't be alive if it weren't for him." Ethan's expression shifted, his smile fading. "William Carter," he murmured. "I remember him. Fine sailor. A good man." Alex's throat tightened. "That was my grandfather. He always said he owed you everything." Ethan shook his head. "Your grandfather didn't owe me a thing. We looked out for each other. That's what you do in war. You look out for the man next to you." Their conversation was interrupted by a flight attendant approaching with a tight smile. "Sir, I need you to return to your seat." Alex met her gaze evenly. "I'm fine here. Thanks." "It's against policy to block the aisle near the restrooms," she said. Her tone clipped. Ethan cleared his throat. "It's all right, son. Don't cause trouble on my account." Reluctantly, Alex stood. "I'll be back," he said quietly before returning to his seat. Back in his row, Alex's mind raced. This man wasn't just a hero from his grandfather's stories. He was a symbol of sacrifice and integrity, and his airline had failed him. As the plane descended, Alex approached Ethan again. "When we land, can I buy you a cup of coffee? There's something I'd like to share with you." Ethan raised an eyebrow but nodded. "All right, son. I suppose I've got time." The airport buzzed with activity, but Alex and Ethan found a quiet corner in a cafe near the baggage claim. Over steaming cups of coffee, Alex listened intently as Ethan shared stories of his service, glossing over his own heroics but painting a vivid picture of camaraderie and sacrifice. Finally, Alex leaned forward. "There's something I need to tell you. I wasn't just a passenger on that flight. I own Carter Airways." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing, waiting for Alex to continue. "I started this airline to honor my grandfather's memory," Alex explained. "He taught me about integrity and treating people with respect. Today, we failed you, and I'm going to make it right." Ethan studied Alex for a long moment before nodding. "Your grandfather would be proud of you." Over the next weeks, Alex worked tirelessly to implement a new program called Operation Honor Flight, ensuring veterans like Ethan were treated with the dignity they deserved. Policies were overhauled, staff underwent training, and partnerships with veteran organizations were forged. The highlight was a ceremony dedicating a plane to Ethan and his unit, its tail painted with the words, "Ethan Whitaker, a legacy of courage." As Ethan boarded the inaugural flight of his namesake plane, Alex watched with pride. The journey wasn't just about honoring one man. It was about ensuring every veteran's story was remembered and respected. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly seen, his sacrifices etched into the skies for all to honor.